It started as an ordinary morning for Cristiano Ronaldo. Like many other days, his schedule was packed. He had training at the stadium, a charity meeting later in the afternoon, and an evening interview to discuss his latest achievements both on and off the pitch. It was a life of routine, though one most people could only dream of. Still, amidst the glamour, Ronaldo was always on the lookout for moments that reminded him of his humble beginnings. Little did he know, today would hold one such moment, one that would linger with him forever. As he drove his sleek, black Bugatti through the busy streets of Lisbon, his mind wandered. It was early, and the city was slowly coming to life. Vendors were setting up their stalls, parents hurried their children off to school, and commuters shuffled through crosswalks, lost in their own worlds. Ronaldo glanced out of the tinted window, observing the everyday lives of people who were strangers to him yet oddly familiar. He often thought about how life might have been different if he hadn't pursued football. But then, something caught his attention, a scene so out of place it made him hit the brakes. A man was sitting hunched over a park bench near a quiet square. The bench itself was old and creaky, with peeling paint that hinted at years of neglect. The man's clothes were a patchwork of worn fabrics, mismatched and frayed at the edges. His shoes, if they could still be called that, were held together by tape, and his long hair fell in unkempt waves over his face. Yet, it wasn't his appearance that held Ronaldo's gaze. It was what the man was doing. He was sketching feverishly, almost desperately, on scraps of old newspapers. His hands moved with precision and urgency, as if he were racing against time to capture something important. A nearby breeze threatened to scatter the papers, but the man barely noticed. He reached out instinctively, pinning the corners down with a discarded coffee cup. Ronaldo couldn't explain it, but something about the scene struck a chord deep within him. The man's intensity, the fire in his eyes, felt like a reflection of his own determination on the field. For a moment, Ronaldo sat there in his car, staring. His driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror, puzzled by the sudden stop. "Is everything all right, Mr. Ronaldo?" the driver asked. Ronaldo didn't answer immediately. He was too focused on the stranger, who seemed completely unaware of the world around him. After a moment, Ronaldo made a decision. "Pull over," he said simply. The driver hesitated but complied, guiding the car to the side of the street. Ronaldo stepped out, his presence immediately drawing the attention of a few passers-by. Whispers and excited murmurs began to ripple through the small crowd, but Ronaldo ignored them. His focus was solely on the man on the bench. As he approached, the faint sound of pencil scratching against paper reached his ears. The man was so absorbed in his work that he didn't notice Ronaldo standing just a few feet away. Ronaldo hesitated, unsure of how to start a conversation. He didn't want to disturb the man but couldn't shake the feeling that this was a moment he wasn't meant to pass by. "What are you drawing?" Ronaldo asked, his voice soft yet steady. The man looked up sharply, his eyes narrowing as they met Ronaldo's. For a moment, there was silence. The man's gaze was piercing, as though he were sizing Ronaldo up, trying to decide if he was friend or foe. Then, with a dismissive shrug, he returned to his sketching. "It's nothing you'd understand," he muttered, his tone guarded. Ronaldo wasn't used to being dismissed so easily, but he wasn't offended. If anything, he was intrigued. He glanced at the scattered papers and caught a glimpse of the sketches. What he saw made his breath catch. Despite the makeshift materials and rough conditions, the drawings were incredibly detailed. One showed an intricate design of what looked like a football stadium, but unlike any stadium Ronaldo had ever seen. The angles, the layout, the sheer imagination, it was extraordinary. "Did you design this?" Ronaldo asked, gesturing toward the sketch. The man hesitated, his hand pausing mid-stroke. "I did," he admitted quietly. Then, as if realizing he'd said too much, he added, "Not that it matters. People don't care about stuff like this when it comes from someone like me. Ronaldo frowned. What do you mean? The man leaned back on the bench, his pencil dangling loosely in his fingers. Look at me, he said with a bitter laugh. Do I look like someone anyone would take seriously? People see the clothes, the mess, the broken shoes. They don't see what's up here. He tapped his temple. Doesn't matter how many ideas I have or how good they are. No one listens. For a moment, Ronaldo didn't know what to say. He thought about his own life, the countless times people had doubted him, told him he wouldn't make it. The difference was, he'd had opportunities to prove them wrong. This man, whoever he was, seemed to have been denied even that. What's your name? Ronaldo asked gently. The man hesitated, as if unsure whether to answer. Finally, he said, Lucas. Well, Lucas, Ronaldo said, his voice firm, I'm listening. Lucas looked at him skeptically. And why would someone like you care? You've got everything. What do you need from me? I don't need anything, Ronaldo replied. But maybe you need someone to care. Tell me your story. Lucas studied him for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether Ronaldo's offer was genuine. Finally, he sighed and gestured to the empty spot on the bench. Fine. Sit down. But don't expect some happy fairytale. Ronaldo smiled faintly and took a seat, bracing himself for what was sure to be an unforgettable story. Ronaldo adjusted himself on the creaky bench, his pristine designer tracksuit starkly contrasting the rough, weathered wood beneath him. Beside him, Lucas hesitated, as if sharing his story would take more courage than he could muster. Finally, he drew a deep breath and began, his voice low and rough, carrying years of untold hardship. I wasn't always like this, Lucas started, glancing briefly at Ronaldo before looking away. I had a life, a good one by most standards. A career, a family, a place I called home. I was an architect, a good one, too. Designing buildings wasn't just my job, it was my passion. I believed every structure could tell a story. A school could inspire hope, a home could shelter dreams, and a stadium, he paused, his fingers clutching the pencil tightly. A stadium could bring people together like nothing else in this world. Ronaldo leaned forward slightly, drawn in by the sincerity in Lucas's tone. He noticed how Lucas's hands trembled, the calloused fingers evidence of years of hard labor or struggle. What happened? Ronaldo prompted gently. Lucas exhaled deeply, shaking his head. Life, he said bitterly. Life happened. One moment, I was on top of the world. I had a firm that was thriving, projects lined up for years. Then, it all came crashing down. The economy tanked, clients pulled out, and just like that, the walls I'd built came crumbling down. He paused for a moment, his jaw tightening. But that wasn't the worst of it. Losing work was one thing, losing family was another. My wife, Anna, she believed in me, stood by me. But when I couldn't provide anymore, when the money dried up, she got tired of waiting for me to figure things out. She left. Took the kids with her. Said they deserved better. Ronaldo felt a pang of empathy as he listened. Despite his success, he knew what it was like to feel the weight of expectations, the fear of disappointing those who mattered most. Lucas continued, his voice growing quieter. After that, everything spiraled. I sold my house, thinking I'd get back on my feet with the money. But I didn't. One failure turned into another. Friends I thought I could count on disappeared, one by one. And now I'm here. He gestured around him, his expression bitter. Just a man with no home, no family, and a mind full of ideas no one wants to hear. For a moment, there was silence. The sounds of the bustling city seemed distant, muted, as Ronaldo absorbed Lucas's words. He could feel the weight of the man's pain, the deep loneliness that came from being invisible to the world. But why the sketches? Ronaldo asked, pointing at the crumpled newspapers scattered around. Why keep drawing if no one listens? Lucas's eyes flickered with a mix of defiance and vulnerability. Because I have to, he said simply. It's the only thing I have left. If I stop creating, stop imagining, then what's the point of me being here at all? These sketches, these ideas, they're all that remind me of who I used to be, who I still want to be. Even if no one sees their value, I do. Ronaldo was silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on the sketches. He saw more than just lines on paper, he saw the remnants of a dream, the spark of brilliance that refused to be extinguished despite everything. You know, Ronaldo said finally, his voice thoughtful, there's a lot we have in common, you and I. Lucas let out a short, incredulous laugh. You're joking, right? You're Cristiano Ronaldo. You've got fame, fortune, a life most people can only dream of. What could we possibly have in common? Ronaldo smiled faintly. More than you think, he said. I wasn't born into this life. I had to fight for it, every step of the way. Growing up, my family didn't have much. There were times we couldn't afford food, let alone luxuries. People doubted me, said I'd never make it. But I didn't give up. I worked harder than anyone else, not because I wanted to prove them wrong, but because I believed in myself, even when no one else did. Lucas looked at him, his expression softening slightly. Must be nice, he said quietly. To believe in yourself. It's not easy, Ronaldo admitted. There were times I wanted to quit, times I thought maybe they were right. But I didn't let those doubts stop me. And neither should you. Lucas shook his head, a wry smile on his lips. Easy for you to say, he muttered. Maybe, Ronaldo said, but I'm sitting here, aren't I? I didn't have to stop today, but I did. Do you know why? Lucas shrugged, clearly unsure of what to say. Because when I saw you, Ronaldo continued, I didn't just see a man on a bench. I saw someone who still has something to offer, someone who hasn't given up, even when the world gave up on him. And that's not nothing, Lucas. That's everything. For the first time, Lucas seemed at a loss for words. He stared at Ronaldo, his eyes searching, as if trying to determine whether he was sincere. Finally, Lucas spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. You really think I still have something to offer? I don't think it, Ronaldo said firmly. I know it. And I want to help you prove it not just to the world, but to yourself. Lucas blinked, his expression a mix of disbelief and cautious hope. Why would you do that? He asked. Because I can, Ronaldo said simply. And because I believe everyone deserves a second chance. Lucas sat back, his hands resting on the scattered papers around him. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of something he thought he'd lost forever: hope. I don't know if I can do this, he said finally, his voice tinged with uncertainty. You don't have to do it alone, Ronaldo said with a reassuring smile. We'll start small. But first, let's get you something to eat. Then, we'll figure out the rest together. Lucas hesitated, then nodded slowly. As he gathered his sketches, he couldn't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. Curiosity got the better of Cristiano Ronaldo. He stepped out of his car, the polished door shutting with a soft thud behind him. The usual hum of the street seemed to fade as he crossed the pavement toward the man on the bench. Something about this stranger's intensity, the way he bent over his work with single-minded focus, made it impossible to walk away. What are you drawing? Ronaldo asked, his voice calm but curious. The man glanced up sharply, his face a roadmap of hardship and exhaustion. His eyes, sharp and almost defiant, met Ronaldo's for a fleeting moment before he turned back to his sketch. It's nothing you'd understand, he muttered, his tone dismissive and edged with bitterness. His hand resumed its rapid movements, pencil scratching against the coarse surface of the paper. Ronaldo didn't move. He wasn't deterred by the man's brusque response. Instead, he shifted slightly to get a better look at the drawings spread across the bench and scattered on the ground around it. The lines were sharp and precise, forming a diagram so intricate it looked almost like an architectural blueprint. "What is this?" Ronaldo asked again, more insistent this time, pointing to the largest sketch. The man paused. For a moment, it seemed as though he might ignore the question entirely. Then, with a sigh, he sat back, letting the pencil drop from his fingers. "It's a stadium," he said flatly. "Not that it matters. It's just something I see in my head." But it wasn't just a stadium. Ronaldo could see that immediately. The design was unlike anything he'd ever seen in his years of playing professional football. The curves and angles of the structure were innovative, futuristic even, yet they seemed practical, as if every line had a purpose. The seating arrangement alone suggested a revolutionary way to view the game. His heart skipped a beat. How could someone sitting on a park bench, using scraps of paper and a broken pencil, create something this brilliant? "You designed this?" Ronaldo asked, his tone now laced with genuine awe. "Yeah," the man replied, shrugging as if it were no big deal. "Not like anyone cares. People don't listen to guys like me. They look at these rags," he gestured at his tattered clothes, "and they see a failure, not someone with ideas." Ronaldo frowned, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the other sketches. There were more, each one a different angle or detail of the same stadium. One showed an overhead view, the seating spiraling in a way that seemed to defy physics. Another illustrated the innovative lighting system, designed to reduce energy consumption. The man clearly wasn't just talented, he was a visionary. At that moment, Ronaldo became aware of the people around him. Locals passed by, some glancing curiously at the scene unfolding, others openly whispering. "That's just Lucas," a woman murmured to her friend as they walked past. "Poor guy thinks he's some kind of genius. Always sketching nonsense." The friend chuckled. "Yeah, he's been here for years. Talks big, but he's just a bum." Ronaldo's jaw tightened. He didn't like the way they spoke about Lucas, as if he were nothing more than a nuisance, a spectacle to ridicule. But Lucas didn't seem to notice, or perhaps he'd simply grown used to it. "They don't understand," Lucas said quietly, almost to himself. His eyes remained fixed on the ground, his voice carrying a mix of resignation and frustration. "To them, I'm just some crazy guy wasting time on dreams that will never come true." Ronaldo crouched slightly, bringing himself to Lucas's eye level. "Why do you let them say that?" he asked gently. Lucas let out a dry laugh, the sound devoid of humor. "What can I do? They're not wrong. I don't have the money, the resources, or the connections to make any of this real. All I have are these drawings and a head full of ideas that no one cares about." Ronaldo shook his head. "I don't believe that. If what's in your head is anything like what's on these papers, then it's not nonsense. It's brilliance." Lucas looked up, his eyes narrowing as if trying to gauge whether Ronaldo was being sincere. "Brilliance," he echoed, his tone skeptical. "Easy for you to say. You're Cristiano Ronaldo. You can have anything you want, go anywhere you please. People listen to you. Me? I'm just a guy with nothing. Less than nothing, really." Ronaldo stayed silent for a moment, letting Lucas's words sink in. He thought about his own journey, the struggles he'd faced to get where he was. While his path had been vastly different, he understood what it felt like to be underestimated, to have others doubt your potential. "You know," Ronaldo said slowly, "I wasn't always where I am today. I grew up in a small home on an island. We didn't have much. There were days when I didn't know if I'd ever make it as a footballer. People doubted me, told me I wasn't good enough. But I didn't let that stop me. And neither should you. Lucas let out a bitter chuckle. Yeah, but you had a chance. Someone gave you a shot. I've been sitting here for years, Ronaldo. No one even bothers to look twice at me. Well, Ronaldo said with a small smile, I'm looking now, aren't I? Lucas blinked, caught off guard by the response. He studied Ronaldo for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether to trust him. Finally, he sighed and gestured to the sketches. Fine. You want to know what this is? It's my dream. I've been designing this stadium in my head for years. I call it the Unity Arena. It's supposed to be more than just a place for games. It's meant to bring people together, no matter where they're from or who they are. Every seat has the perfect view. The materials are sustainable. The whole thing runs on clean energy. It's my way of giving back to the world, of creating something that matters. Ronaldo's expression softened as he listened. There was passion in Lucas's voice, a passion he recognized because he shared it for football. This wasn't just a homeless man rambling about impossible dreams. This was someone with vision, someone who had the talent to make a real difference if only he were given the chance. It's incredible, Ronaldo said earnestly. This design, this idea, it's incredible. Lucas shook his head, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. Maybe. But it'll never be anything more than lines on paper. Ronaldo stood up, his gaze steady and determined. Not if I have anything to say about it, he said firmly. Lucas frowned, confusion flickering across his face. What are you talking about? Ronaldo extended a hand. I want to help you, he said. I don't know how yet, but I do know one thing, ideas like yours deserve to be seen. And you deserve to be heard. For a moment, Lucas just stared at Ronaldo's outstretched hand, disbelief etched into every line of his face. Then, slowly, hesitantly, he reached out and took it. Why? Lucas asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Because everyone deserves a chance, Ronaldo replied simply. And I think it's time you got yours. The murmurs of the onlookers faded into the background as the two men stood there, united by a shared understanding that transcended their vastly different circumstances. Ronaldo knew this was only the beginning, and Lucas, for the first time in years, he felt a flicker of hope. Ronaldo let go of Lucas's hand, his grip firm but reassuring. Lucas looked down, as though the simple act of shaking hands with the football legend had triggered a cascade of doubts. He seemed unconvinced, his shoulders hunched against the weight of an invisible burden. I don't understand, Lucas said, shaking his head slowly. Why would you, of all people, care? You don't know me. You could walk away right now, and it wouldn't change your life one bit. Ronaldo smiled faintly, his arms folding across his chest. You're right, he admitted. I could walk away. But what kind of person would I be if I did? I've been where you are, not exactly, but close enough to know what it feels like to think no one believes in you. Lucas snorted, the sound bitter. Easy to say when you're at the top of the world. Is it? Ronaldo countered, his tone sharper now. You think fame and money mean I've never struggled? I was a kid from Madeira, Lucas. My father worked hard, but we had almost nothing. I had to leave home when I was just a boy to chase a dream everyone told me was impossible. I've faced doubt, criticism, and pressure at every turn. The difference is, I didn't let it stop me. And neither should you. Lucas stared at him, something flickering in his eyes, hope, perhaps, or the beginnings of belief. But it was fragile, like a flame struggling against the wind. You make it sound so simple, Lucas muttered, turning his attention back to his sketches. But it's not. You had talent people could see. Football is universal, everyone understands it. Me. I'm just a guy drawing on scraps of paper. Stop saying just, Ronaldo said firmly. You're not just anything. Look at this. He gestured to the most detailed sketch, the one that had caught his attention first. This isn't something anyone can do. This is vision, Lucas. This is talent. You've built something incredible in your mind, and now it's time to show the world. Lucas hesitated, his fingers tracing the edge of the paper. Even if I wanted to, he said finally, I wouldn't know where to start. No one's going to take a guy like me seriously. They will, Ronaldo said, his voice steady. Because I will. Lucas blinked, looking up at him. You. Yes, Ronaldo said. I'll help you. We'll figure this out together. Lucas laughed, the sound hollow and disbelieving. You're serious? Cristiano Ronaldo, global superstar, is going to help a homeless nobody build a stadium. You're not a nobody, Ronaldo said firmly. And yes, I'm serious. But before we start talking about stadiums, we need to take care of you first. When's the last time you had a proper meal? Lucas hesitated, then shrugged. Yesterday, maybe the day before. It all blurs together. Ronaldo frowned, his concern deepening. That's not going to work. Come on. Lucas looked at him warily. Come on where? To eat, Ronaldo said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I can't just, Lucas trailed off, gesturing vaguely at his disheveled appearance. Yes, you can, Ronaldo said, his tone leaving no room for argument. We'll find a quiet place. No one's going to bother you if you're with me. Lucas hesitated again, then finally stood, gathering his sketches into a neat stack. He moved carefully, as though afraid the papers might fall apart if he handled them too quickly. Ronaldo waited patiently, then led the way to his car. As they drove, Lucas stared out the window, his expression unreadable. The streets of Lisbon blurred past, a mix of old-world charm and modern energy, but Lucas seemed lost in thought. You don't have to do this, you know, he said quietly after a while. I know, Ronaldo replied. But I want to. Lucas didn't respond. He wasn't used to kindness, especially not from someone like Ronaldo. The doubt still lingered in his mind, whispering that this was too good to be true. They pulled up outside a small, cozy restaurant tucked away on a quiet street. Ronaldo had chosen it deliberately, knowing it would offer privacy and comfort without drawing too much attention. Inside, the warm, inviting smell of freshly baked bread and simmering stew filled the air. Ronaldo gestured for Lucas to sit, then called over the waiter. Order whatever you like, Ronaldo said, sliding the menu toward Lucas. Lucas hesitated, his fingers brushing against the edges of the menu. He couldn't remember the last time someone had offered him a choice, let alone treated him like he belonged in a place like this. After a moment, he ordered something simple, a bowl of soup and a piece of bread. Ronaldo raised an eyebrow but didn't push. He added a few more dishes to the order, ensuring there would be enough for both of them. As they waited for the food, Lucas seemed to relax slightly. The warmth of the restaurant, combined with Ronaldo's calm demeanor, made it harder to cling to his usual defenses. So, Ronaldo said, breaking the silence. Tell me about this stadium. What inspired it? Lucas hesitated, then leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant. I've always loved football, he admitted. Not just the game, but what it represents. The way it brings people together, no matter where they're from. I wanted to create a space that amplified that, something that felt like home for everyone. Ronaldo nodded, his respect for Lucas growing. That's a powerful idea, he said. Maybe, Lucas said with a shrug. But like I said, it's just an idea. Without resources, it'll never be anything more. Ronaldo leaned forward, his expression serious. Resources can be found. What matters is the vision, And you have that. Don't sell yourself short, Lucas. Their food arrived then, interrupting the conversation. Lucas hesitated again, then picked up his spoon and took a tentative bite. The soup was rich and flavorful, and for a moment, his guarded expression softened. Ronaldo watched him with a small smile. Good. Lucas nodded, swallowing. Yeah. Thanks. As they ate, the tension between them began to ease. Lucas started to open up, sharing more about his life before everything had fallen apart: his family, his career, the dreams he'd once had. Ronaldo listened intently, his admiration for Lucas growing with every word. When they finished the meal, Ronaldo leaned back in his chair, his tone thoughtful. You've got a story worth telling, Lucas, he said. And a talent worth sharing. We're going to make sure the world sees it. Lucas looked at him, his expression a mix of skepticism and gratitude. I don't know why you're doing this, he said quietly. Because I can, Ronaldo replied simply. And because I believe in you, even if you don't believe in yourself yet. Lucas didn't respond, but for the first time in years, he felt something stir inside him, a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change. Over the next week, Cristiano Ronaldo found himself returning to the park more often than he'd anticipated. There was something about Lucas, something about the fire in his eyes despite the hardships etched into his face that made him impossible to forget. This time, Ronaldo arrived not only with a hot meal but also with a soccer ball tucked under his arm. As Lucas sat hunched over his sketches on the same weathered bench, Ronaldo approached with a friendly smile. Brought you something, Ronaldo said, holding out the food. Lucas glanced up, suspicion flickering in his eyes before he slowly reached for the container. Thanks, he muttered, though his tone remained guarded. Ronaldo sat down beside him, the soccer ball resting between his hands. For a moment, the two men sat in silence, the bustle of the park carrying on around them. What are you working on today? Ronaldo asked casually, nodding toward the stack of papers spread across the bench. Lucas hesitated before answering. Just refining a few details, he said, his voice clipped. Not that it matters. It matters to me, Ronaldo said earnestly. Lucas shot him a skeptical look but said nothing, his focus returning to the paper in front of him. As Lucas ate, Ronaldo started bouncing the soccer ball lightly on the ground, the rhythmic sound drawing Lucas's attention despite himself. You any good with one of these? Ronaldo asked, a playful smile tugging at his lips. Lucas let out a dry laugh. I'm not exactly athletic material. Ronaldo grinned, standing and balancing the ball on his foot. Everyone starts somewhere, he said, flicking the ball into the air and catching it with his chest before letting it drop back to his foot. Come on, give it a try. Lucas raised an eyebrow but set his foot aside, standing reluctantly. Ronaldo passed the ball to him, and Lucas awkwardly attempted to mimic Ronaldo's movements. The result was less than graceful, the ball skittering off to the side. Ronaldo laughed, the sound genuine and warm. Not bad for a first try, he said, retrieving the ball. But don't worry, I'm a pretty good coach. For the first time, Lucas smiled, a small, fleeting expression, but a smile nonetheless. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the two men continued their impromptu soccer session, drawing the attention of a few passers-by. Lucas, though rusty and hesitant, began to loosen up, his movements becoming more fluid with each passing minute. Afterward, they sat on the bench again, Lucas catching his breath while Ronaldo leaned back, his gaze thoughtful. Why don't you rebuild your life? Ronaldo asked suddenly, his tone serious. Lucas scoffed, shaking his head. Rebuild? Do you have any idea how many doors have been slammed in my face? People see these clothes, this, he gestured to his disheveled appearance, and they don't see anything else. They don't care what I'm capable of. They don't even ask. Ronaldo frowned, his expression contemplative. "But you're not just anyone, Lucas," he said. "I've seen what you can do. You have talent most people can only dream of." "Talent doesn't matter when no one gives you a chance," Lucas muttered bitterly. Ronaldo leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "Then let me help," he said. "Show me what you're capable of. I want to see everything, every sketch, every idea. Let's prove them wrong." Lucas hesitated, the weight of Ronaldo's words hanging in the air. He wanted to believe him, to trust that someone as influential as Cristiano Ronaldo genuinely cared. But years of rejection had left their mark, and hope felt like a dangerous thing to hold onto. "What's the catch?" Lucas asked finally, his voice wary. "No catch," Ronaldo replied simply. "I just think the world deserves to see what you can do." After a long pause, Lucas nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "I'll show you." Over the following days, Ronaldo and Lucas began meeting regularly. Lucas brought more of his sketches, each one more intricate and impressive than the last. Ronaldo marveled at the level of detail, the way Lucas thought of everything from sustainable materials to innovative seating arrangements designed to enhance the fan experience. "This is incredible," Ronaldo said one afternoon, holding up a sketch of a solar-paneled roof that doubled as a rainwater collection system. "Where did you learn to design like this?" "I studied architecture," Lucas said, his tone distant. "Graduated at the top of my class. Worked for a big firm for a while." "What happened?" Ronaldo asked gently. Lucas hesitated, then sighed. "Life," he said simply. "A series of bad decisions, bad luck, and bad timing. I lost my job, my home, everything. Once you fall far enough, it's hard to climb back up." Ronaldo nodded, his expression somber. "But you didn't stop designing." "No," Lucas admitted. "I couldn't. It's the only thing that's kept me going." Ronaldo's admiration for Lucas deepened. Here was a man who had every reason to give up, yet he continued to create, to dream. "You've got something special, Lucas," Ronaldo said. "And I'm going to make sure people see it." Ronaldo decided it was time to take action. He began reaching out to his network: architects, investors, philanthropists sharing Lucas's story and sketches. At first, there was skepticism. Who was this homeless man claiming to be an architectural genius? But Ronaldo's passion and belief in Lucas were contagious, and slowly, people began to take notice. One evening, Ronaldo brought Lucas to his home, introducing him to a small group of influential people who had agreed to hear his story. "Lucas," Ronaldo said, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder, "this is your chance. Show them what you've got." Lucas hesitated, his nerves threatening to overwhelm him. But as he looked at the sketches spread out before him, something shifted. He straightened his shoulders, took a deep breath, and began to speak. He explained the inspiration behind his designs, the thought process behind every line and curve. He spoke about his vision for a stadium that wasn't just a place to watch football, but a symbol of unity and innovation. By the time he finished, the room was silent. The skepticism in the investors' eyes had been replaced by something else: respect. "This," one of them said, holding up a sketch, "is extraordinary." Lucas glanced at Ronaldo, who gave him an encouraging nod. For the first time in years, Lucas felt like someone was truly listening. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Meetings turned into opportunities, and opportunities turned into tangible progress. Ronaldo helped Lucas secure funding for his project, connecting him with people who shared his vision. Lucas, in turn, began to believe in himself again. His confidence grew with each step forward, the weight of his past slowly lifting from his shoulders. And though the road ahead was still long, one thing was clear: Lucas's talent was no longer hidden. The world was starting to see what Ronaldo had seen all along, a genius ready to rise from the ashes of his circumstances. As Lucas's confidence grew, so did his willingness to share more of his story. Over coffee one afternoon at Ronaldo's home, he opened up about the chain of events that had brought him to the streets. "It wasn't just one thing," Lucas said, his gaze fixed on the steaming cup in his hands. "It was like a domino effect. My mother got sick, and I spent most of my savings on her treatment. Then the firm I was working for downsized, and I was let go. I thought I'd bounce back. I had a good reputation, a strong portfolio. But jobs didn't come as easily as I'd hoped." Ronaldo listened intently, his expression a mix of empathy and resolve. "And no one offered to help?" Lucas shook his head. "At first, people were sympathetic. But sympathy fades. Friends stop answering your calls. People start looking at you differently, like you're a problem they don't want to deal with." He paused, his voice growing quieter. "Eventually, I stopped asking for help. It's easier that way." "But you didn't give up," Ronaldo said. "I came close," Lucas admitted. "More times than I'd like to admit. But every time I thought about quitting, I'd pick up a pencil. Sketching was my way of escaping everything. It made me feel human again." Ronaldo leaned back in his chair, his admiration for Lucas deepening. "You've been through more than most people can imagine, and yet you're still here, creating, dreaming. That's incredible, Lucas." Lucas gave a small, self-deprecating smile. "It doesn't feel incredible. It feels exhausting." "It won't always feel that way," Ronaldo said firmly. "We're going to change things." With Ronaldo's support, Lucas's designs began to circulate among influential figures in the architectural and sports communities. One of the first breakthroughs came when a renowned architectural firm expressed interest in his work. They were skeptical at first, unsure if Lucas's talent could translate into real-world projects. Ronaldo arranged a meeting, insisting that Lucas present his ideas in person. The meeting was held in a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Lucas, dressed in clothes Ronaldo had helped him pick out, looked every bit the professional he once was. As he stood before the group, his hands slightly trembling, he began to speak. "This isn't just a stadium," Lucas said, pointing to a detailed blueprint displayed on the screen behind him. "It's a community hub. A place where people from all walks of life can come together, not just to watch football, but to connect, to grow." Every detail, every line, every curve was designed with that purpose in mind. The room was silent as Lucas continued, his passion evident in every word. By the time he finished, the skepticism in the room had been replaced with genuine interest. One of the firm's executives, a stern-looking woman with sharp glasses, leaned forward. "Mr. Costa," she said, addressing Lucas by his last name, "your designs are remarkable. I'd like to discuss how we can collaborate." Lucas blinked, momentarily stunned. He glanced at Ronaldo, who gave him a subtle thumbs up. "Thank you," Lucas said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside him. With the architectural firm on board, Lucas's project began to take shape. The stadium, which he had dreamed of for years, was no longer just a collection of sketches. It was becoming a reality. Ronaldo, true to his word, stayed by Lucas's side every step of the way. He used his platform to promote the project, speaking about Lucas's vision in interviews and on social media. The story of a homeless architect turned stadium designer captivated the public, and soon, Lucas became a symbol of resilience and untapped potential. But not everyone was supportive. There were detractors who questioned Lucas's credibility, accusing him of riding on Ronaldo's fame. The criticism stung, but Lucas refused to let it deter him. "I spent years listening to people tell me I wasn't good enough," Lucas said during one particularly tough day. "I'm not going to let them stop me now. Ronaldo nodded, his respect for Lucas growing even more. "That's the spirit," he said. "Let them doubt. We'll prove them wrong." As the project gained momentum, Lucas found himself revisiting parts of his past he had long tried to forget. One day, he and Ronaldo drove to Lucas's old neighborhood, a quiet area on the outskirts of Lisbon. "This is where it all started," Lucas said as they parked outside a modest apartment building. "I used to sit on that balcony, sketching for hours. Back then, I thought I had all the time in the world." Ronaldo looked up at the building, imagining a younger Lucas full of hope and ambition. "Do you ever think about coming back here?" Lucas hesitated. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But it's hard. It's a reminder of everything I lost." Ronaldo placed a reassuring hand on Lucas's shoulder. "You didn't lose everything," he said. "You still have your talent, your vision. And now, you're building something that's going to inspire millions of people." Lucas nodded, his eyes glistening. "I hope so," he said softly. As construction on the stadium began, Lucas found himself overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the project. There were countless decisions to make, each one requiring precision and creativity. But with each challenge he overcame, his confidence grew. Ronaldo continued to be his biggest supporter, checking in regularly and offering encouragement. One afternoon, as they toured the construction site together, Ronaldo turned to Lucas with a grin. "You know," he said, "this might just be the best stadium in the world when it's finished." Lucas laughed, shaking his head. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." "I'm serious," Ronaldo said. "This is more than a stadium, Lucas. It's a symbol of what's possible when you don't give up." Lucas smiled, his heart swelling with pride. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe in the possibility of a brighter future. As the project neared completion, the story of Lucas's journey began to spread even further. News outlets around the world covered the story of the homeless architect whose designs had captivated one of football's greatest legends. Lucas, though initially overwhelmed by the attention, began to embrace his newfound platform. He used interviews to speak not just about the stadium, but about the importance of recognizing and nurturing talent in unexpected places. "This isn't just my story," Lucas said during one interview. "It's the story of everyone who's been overlooked, underestimated, or forgotten. Talent doesn't disappear just because someone falls on hard times. We need to do better at seeing people for who they are, not just where they are." The words resonated with millions, turning Lucas into an unlikely hero. As the stadium's grand opening approached, Lucas found himself reflecting on everything that had led him to this moment. The challenges, the setbacks, the moments of despair, they all felt like distant memories now, replaced by a sense of purpose and accomplishment. On the day of the opening, Lucas stood alongside Ronaldo, looking out at the completed stadium. It was everything he had envisioned and more, a testament to resilience, creativity, and the power of belief. "Thank you," Lucas said quietly, turning to Ronaldo. Ronaldo smiled, his hand resting on Lucas's shoulder. "Don't thank me," he said. "This was always inside you. I just helped you bring it to the surface." As the crowd began to fill the stadium, Lucas took a deep breath, his heart swelling with gratitude and pride. For the first time in years, he felt truly seen. And he knew this was only the beginning. The day Lucas had both dreamed of and feared arrived faster than he could have anticipated. Ronaldo had pulled every string possible to arrange this meeting at his club's iconic stadium, a place that symbolized excellence, ambition, and triumph. Lucas stood in the middle of a sleek conference room, surrounded by some of the most influential figures in sports and architecture. The air was thick with skepticism. Executives exchanged whispers, glancing occasionally at Lucas. They saw a man whose worn-out past clashed with the polished surroundings, and their doubt was palpable. Lucas felt it too, the weight of their judgment. But Ronaldo's hand on his shoulder brought him back to the moment. "It's your time," Ronaldo said softly. Lucas stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly as he unrolled his designs. The large table in the room soon displayed his vision, a football stadium unlike any other. The sketches showcased not just a building but an ecosystem, a sustainable, community-driven hub that merged cutting-edge technology with environmental consciousness. At first, the room was filled with murmurs of disinterest. "Another stadium design," someone muttered under their breath. But Lucas ignored the doubt, his voice steady as he began to explain. "This isn't just a place to play football," Lucas began, his tone measured but passionate. "It's a space where the sport's love meets innovation and inclusivity. Every element is designed to serve not just the game, but the community around it." He pointed to specific areas on his designs. Energy efficiency, solar panels covering the roof, generating more power than the stadium would consume. Community integration, public spaces for local events, learning programs, and open areas for children to play. Circular design, materials that could be reused or repurposed, leaving a minimal environmental footprint. The murmurs quieted as the room leaned in. "What's this section here?" an executive interrupted, pointing to a section labeled Player and Fan Harmony Zone. Lucas smiled. "That's the tunnel where players and fans can briefly interact before and after matches. A simple moment, but one that humanizes the experience and bridges the gap between the game's stars and its supporters." The executives exchanged glances. Even those who had doubted him couldn't deny the depth of thought behind every detail. Despite the growing intrigue, one of the senior executives, an older man with a reputation for being blunt, leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "This all sounds wonderful," he said, his tone dripping with skepticism. "But visionary designs are one thing. Delivering results is another. Why should we trust you, Mr. Costa?" The room turned to Lucas, waiting for his response. Lucas took a deep breath, his earlier nerves now replaced with quiet determination. "You don't have to trust me," he said simply. "Trust the designs. Trust the vision. And trust the fact that I poured everything I have into this not for money or recognition, but because I believe it will change the way we think about sports, architecture, and community." He paused, meeting the executive's gaze. "But if you need proof of my commitment, look at where I started and where I am now. I didn't have resources, connections, or support. What I had was an idea and the determination to see it through. That's why you should trust me, because I won't let this fail." The room was silent for a moment before one of the younger executives leaned forward. "It's bold," she said, her eyes sparkling with genuine interest. "But maybe bold is exactly what we need." As the discussion continued, Ronaldo stepped in. "I've worked with some of the most brilliant minds in football," he began, his voice commanding the room's attention. "And I can tell you that Lucas is one of them. His vision goes beyond what we've seen before. He isn't just designing a stadium, he's redefining what it means to bring people together through sport." His words carried weight, and the executives knew it. Ronaldo wasn't just a football legend, he was a man who rarely endorsed anything without conviction. One of the executives, visibly moved, cleared his throat. "If Ronaldo believes in this, then maybe we should too. Let's discuss how we can move forward with this project." Lucas's breath hitched. The words felt surreal, like a dream he was afraid to wake from. As the meeting concluded, and the room began to empty, Lucas turned to Ronaldo, his voice trembling. "Why did you do this for me?" Ronaldo smiled, his expression soft. "Because sometimes the greatest talents are hidden in the most unexpected places. All they need is someone to believe in them." Lucas blinked back tears, his heart swelling with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," Ronaldo said. "Just make this the masterpiece I know it can be." The announcement of the project spread like wildfire. News outlets around the world covered the story of a homeless architect whose talent had not only caught the attention of Cristiano Ronaldo but had also inspired the creation of a groundbreaking stadium. At a public unveiling of the finalized designs, Lucas stood on stage alongside Ronaldo. As the sketches were projected onto a massive screen, the audience erupted into applause. It wasn't just admiration for the designs, it was recognition of Lucas's journey, his resilience, and his undeniable brilliance. When Lucas stepped up to the microphone, his voice cracked with emotion. "This isn't just my dream," he said. "It's proof that no matter how far you fall, with the right support, you can rise again. This stadium isn't about me, it's about all of us, and what we can achieve when we come together." The applause turned into a standing ovation. In the crowd, people held signs that read "Believe in the unseen" and "From the streets to the stars." As the event concluded, Ronaldo placed a hand on Lucas's shoulder. "This is just the beginning," he said. Lucas nodded, a new light in his eyes. "I know. And I'm ready." For the first time in years, Lucas felt not just hope, but certainty. He had found his place again, and this time, he wasn't going to let go. In the days following the big reveal, the world couldn't stop talking about Lucas Costa and his revolutionary stadium design. Social media buzzed with hashtags like #BelieveInLucas, #RonaldoandLucas, and #Stadium of the Future. Everyone wanted to know more about the man who had gone from sketching on scraps of paper in a park to leading one of the most ambitious architectural projects the sports world had ever seen. Interviews poured in, and Lucas found himself on television shows, podcasts, and in newspapers. Each time, he spoke with humility and passion, always redirecting the focus to the project and the larger message behind it. "This isn't just my success," Lucas said during an interview with a prominent global news outlet. "This is proof that every person, no matter where they come from or what they've been through, deserves a second chance. Talent and potential don't fade just because life gets hard." The public was inspired, but not everyone was ready to accept Lucas's rise. Detractors emerged, questioning his credibility, his qualifications, and whether his story had been exaggerated. One particularly biting article claimed Lucas was nothing more than a PR stunt, orchestrated by Ronaldo to bolster his philanthropic image. The headline read, "From homeless to hero or just a convenient fairytale?" Lucas read the article in silence, his jaw tightening with each word. Ronaldo noticed his friend's distress and leaned forward. "You can't let them get to you," he said. "They're questioning everything I've worked for," Lucas replied, his voice low. "What if they're right? What if people only see me as a charity case?" Ronaldo's eyes narrowed. "People will always have opinions, Lucas. But you didn't get here because of charity. You got here because of your talent, your vision, and your resilience. Don't let a few doubters take that away from you." Lucas nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. "You're right. I need to stay focused." To counter the critics, Lucas and Ronaldo decided to be completely transparent about the project's process. They invited journalists to the construction site, allowing them to witness Lucas's hands-on involvement and his undeniable expertise. One journalist, initially skeptical, wrote a follow-up piece after visiting the site: "Lucas Costa is no charity case. His brilliance is undeniable, and his vision is transforming not just architecture but how we view second chances." The tide began to turn, and Lucas's critics found themselves drowned out by a wave of public support. As the stadium's construction progressed, Lucas became a fixture at the site. He spent hours working alongside engineers, builders, and designers, ensuring every detail aligned with his vision. The workers, initially unsure of what to make of him, quickly grew to respect Lucas for his dedication and expertise. "He's the real deal," one of the site supervisors said in an interview. "Lucas doesn't just sit back and give orders. He's right here with us, solving problems, making adjustments, and inspiring everyone to do their best work." Ronaldo, true to his promise, continued to support Lucas every step of the way. He visited the site regularly, often bringing lunch for the workers and staying to kick a football around during breaks. "It's more than just a stadium," Ronaldo told a reporter during one of his visits. "It's a symbol of resilience, creativity, and what can happen when you believe in someone." As the stadium neared completion, Lucas faced one final challenge. An unforeseen structural issue threatened to delay the project and increase costs significantly. The issue required a redesign of a critical section of the roof, a process that could take weeks to resolve. Lucas felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Failure wasn't an option, not now, not after everything. He spent 3 sleepless nights poring over the blueprints, sketching and resketching solutions. On the 4th morning, he called an emergency meeting with the engineering team. "I think I've found a way," Lucas said, spreading out his revised designs on the table. The room fell silent as the team studied his work. After what felt like an eternity, one of the senior engineers nodded. "This could work," she said, her voice filled with cautious optimism. "It's ambitious, but it's brilliant." The redesign was implemented, and the issue was resolved without significant delays. The workers began calling Lucas the architect of second chances, a nickname that quickly caught on in the media. The day of the grand opening arrived, and the stadium was a masterpiece. Its sleek, modern design blended seamlessly with its sustainable features, and the community spaces buzzed with activity even before the first match was played. The event was attended by thousands, including celebrities, sports legends, and fans from all over the world. As Lucas stood on stage next to Ronaldo, he looked out at the sea of faces and felt a wave of emotion. When it was his turn to speak, Lucas gripped the microphone tightly. "This stadium is more than steel and concrete," he began, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "It's proof that no matter how far you fall, you can rise again. It's a reminder that everyone deserves a second chance and that sometimes, all it takes is one person to believe in you." The crowd erupted into applause, and Lucas turned to Ronaldo, who gave him a proud nod. As the first match kicked off in the new stadium, Lucas stood at the edge of the pitch, watching the players and fans come alive. The chants, the cheers, the energy, it was everything he had dreamed of and more. Ronaldo joined him, clapping him on the back. "This is your moment, Lucas," he said. Lucas smiled, his eyes shimmering with tears. "It's our moment. I couldn't have done this without you." As the two men stood there, surrounded by the roaring crowd and the dazzling lights of the stadium, it was clear that this wasn't just the culmination of a project. It was the beginning of a legacy, a story that would inspire generations to come. And for Lucas, it was proof that sometimes, even in the darkest moments, the light of hope can lead to something extraordinary. The grand unveiling of the new stadium was a global event. Television cameras panned over the gleaming structure as fans poured in, their faces alight with excitement. Every detail of the stadium spoke to Lucas's vision, its eco-friendly design, its open community spaces, and its innovative features that set it apart from anything the football world had seen before. Lucas stood at the center of the pitch, humbled and overwhelmed. The cheers of the crowd were deafening as the announcer introduced him, the visionary architect who proved that talent knows no boundaries, Lucas Costa. For a moment, Lucas froze, his breath catching in his throat. This was it, the moment he had fought so hard for, through sleepless nights and endless battles with self-doubt. As the applause swelled, he finally stepped forward, taking the microphone. "This stadium isn't just my achievement," Lucas began, his voice trembling with emotion. "It's proof that when we believe in people, amazing things can happen. This is for every person who has been overlooked, doubted, or dismissed. You are not invisible. You are not forgotten. And you are capable of greatness." The crowd roared, and tears streamed down Lucas's face as he looked up at Ronaldo in the VIP box. Ronaldo stood and clapped, nodding with quiet pride. The attention surrounding Lucas's success didn't just inspire millions, it also forced society to confront uncomfortable truths. People began to ask, how many other talented individuals had been ignored simply because of their circumstances. One of the biggest moments of reckoning came when Lucas's former employers, those who had dismissed him when he fell on hard times, were confronted by the media. Journalists dug into the story, uncovering details about how Lucas had been overlooked despite his talent and contributions. In an exclusive interview, Lucas was asked about those who had turned their backs on him. "Do you feel angry?" the reporter asked. Lucas shook his head. "Anger won't change the past. But I hope my story reminds people to look beyond appearances. Everyone deserves compassion and a second chance." Still, the public wasn't as forgiving. Companies that had previously rejected Lucas faced backlash, with many calling for greater accountability in how society treats those who fall on hard times. Policies were discussed, charities received increased funding, and campaigns were launched to promote inclusivity in industries that often shut their doors to the vulnerable. With the success of the stadium, Lucas found himself in a position he had never imagined: financially secure and globally admired. But he didn't let it end there. Instead, he used his platform to uplift others, creating an organization dedicated to helping homeless individuals with creative and technical skills find opportunities. The initiative, called Hidden Gems, partnered with major companies to offer mentorships, training, and job placements. Lucas personally mentored many of the program's participants, often sharing his own story to inspire them. "Everyone has potential," Lucas said at the launch of the organization. "Sometimes, all it takes is someone to see it and nurture it." The impact was immediate. Stories began to emerge of people who, like Lucas, had once been overlooked but were now thriving in careers they loved. Architects, engineers, designers, and artists, all given a second chance, credited Lucas and Hidden Gems for their transformation. Throughout all of this, Ronaldo stayed in the background, never seeking credit for what he had done. But Lucas never let an opportunity pass to remind the world of the role Ronaldo had played. "He didn't just give me food or money," Lucas said in an interview. "He gave me a chance. He saw something in me when no one else did. That's what makes Ronaldo more than a football legend, he's a legend of humanity." When asked about his decision to help Lucas, Ronaldo was characteristically humble. "It wasn't a big decision," he said. "It was just the right thing to do. Everyone deserves someone who believes in them." Despite the overwhelming success of the stadium and Lucas's new mission, there were still detractors. Some accused Lucas of being a one-hit wonder, suggesting that his success was a fluke. Others criticized his organization, claiming it was a publicity stunt. But Lucas had learned to handle criticism with grace. He focused on his work, letting the results speak for themselves. When the second stadium he designed, this time for a club in South America, was unveiled to even greater acclaim, the doubts began to fade. "I don't design to prove anyone wrong," Lucas said in an interview. "I design to create something meaningful, something that brings people together." Months after its opening, the stadium was already making history. It hosted major football matches, concerts, and community events, becoming a beloved hub for people from all walks of life. Fans praised its accessibility, noting how the design made it easy for everyone regardless of physical ability to enjoy the events. Local businesses thrived thanks to the increased foot traffic, and the stadium's green initiatives inspired other venues to adopt similar practices. But perhaps the most touching impact was the stories of individuals who found hope in Lucas's story. One young boy, seen sketching in the stadium's community space, was interviewed by a local reporter. "I want to be like Lucas Costa," he said, holding up a drawing of a stadium he had designed. "He showed me that I can be anything, even if people don't believe in me right now." One evening, long after the stadium had emptied following a thrilling match, Lucas and Ronaldo stood together on the pitch. The stars above seemed to mirror the floodlights, casting a magical glow over the scene. Did you ever think it would turn out like this? Lucas asked, his voice filled with wonder. Ronaldo chuckled. I knew you had it in you. The world just needed to see it. Lucas nodded, his heart full. Thank you, he said softly. You've thanked me enough, Ronaldo replied. Now, it's your turn to be someone else's light. As the months turned into years, Lucas's work continued to grow. More stadiums, more initiatives, and more lives changed. But through it all, he never forgot where he came from or the people who had helped him along the way. One day, during a quiet moment in the park where it had all started, Lucas sat on a bench with his sketchbook. A young man approached, hesitating before speaking. Mr. Costa, he asked nervously. I don't know if you'll care, but I have some designs I've been working on. Would you look at them? Lucas smiled warmly, patting the space next to him. Of course. Show me what you've got. And so, the legacy continued not just in the buildings Lucas designed, but in the hope he ignited in others, proving that brilliance could rise from the most unlikely places, as long as someone believed in it. Sometimes, the greatest victories aren't scored on the field but in the lives we touch. And as Lucas's story proved, it's not where you come from but where you're heading that truly defines you. Would you have stopped at that park bench? When Cristiano Ronaldo first saw Lucas, he was just another homeless man sitting on a park bench, sketching on scraps of paper. To most, he was invisible. To the world, he was just another face in the crowd, overlooked and dismissed. But Ronaldo didn't see him that way. He didn't just walk past, assuming Lucas had no potential, no future. He saw something more, something others couldn't see. And in that small, seemingly insignificant moment, everything changed. It's easy to overlook the people we pass by every day. It's easy to assume that someone's current situation defines their future. After all, we live in a world that often values appearances over substance. But the truth is, every person has a story, every person has something valuable to offer if given the chance. Lucas's rise from homelessness to becoming an internationally recognized architect wasn't the result of just one kind act. It wasn't the result of just one moment of belief. It was a series of decisions. A series of chances. A series of people choosing to believe in him when they could have chosen to ignore him, to judge him based on his appearance or his circumstances. Every person who gave him a chance, every person who saw beyond his clothes or his past, played a part in the incredible journey that changed not just his life, but the lives of countless others. But it all started with one simple decision. One act of kindness. One person choosing to stop and ask, "What are you drawing?" That simple question from Ronaldo opened the door to something extraordinary. It proved that all it takes to change someone's life is to believe in them even when the world hasn't yet seen their potential. And that's where the real lesson lies. The world is filled with opportunities to make a difference. Whether it's through a simple conversation, offering a helping hand, or just taking a moment to notice someone who may seem invisible to everyone else, we all have the power to change someone's life. Lucas didn't get where he was because of luck. He got there because people chose to see him as more than just his circumstances. They chose to see the person he was on the inside, the person he could become. Ronaldo's belief in Lucas didn't stop when he helped him with his sketches. He stood by Lucas, supporting him through every challenge, every moment of doubt. He saw Lucas not for his past but for what he could achieve. And that's the key. Sometimes, it's not about what a person has done but what they are capable of. It's easy to get caught up in the judgments we make about others based on their appearances or their situations. We all have biases, whether we realize it or not. We all have moments where we might look at someone and assume their worth based on things like their clothes, their job, or where they come from. But what if we stopped doing that? What if we started seeing people for who they really are, what they have to offer, the potential they hold inside? What if we made a habit of believing in others, even when the world hasn't caught up yet? Lucas's story is one of transformation, but it's also one of inspiration. It reminds us that we don't need to be perfect or have everything figured out to make a difference. It reminds us that the most unlikely people can accomplish the most extraordinary things when they're given the right support, the right opportunities, and most importantly, when someone believes in them. The truth is, Lucas's success wasn't just about designing a stadium or creating a piece of architecture that would last for generations. It was about something deeper. It was about the way he used his second chance to help others. It was about the way he turned his own pain and hardship into a source of strength, a source of inspiration for others who were struggling. He didn't just rise above his own circumstances, he pulled others up with him. He became a symbol of hope for those who were forgotten, those who were seen as nobodies, those who had no place in society. And through his work, through his passion, he showed them that they, too, could rise. Lucas didn't just design a stadium, he designed a future. He designed a place where people from all walks of life could come together, where the possibilities were endless, where everyone had a chance to be part of something bigger than themselves. That's the true power of a dream, when it's not just about you, but about creating something that can help others, too. It's easy to feel like the world is too big and our impact is too small. But what Lucas showed us is that we all have the power to change lives. It's not about waiting for the world to recognize us. It's about seeing the world around us and asking, who needs help? Who can I believe in today? Whether it's someone on the street or a friend who's struggling, whether it's a colleague who feels overlooked or a child with big dreams but no resources, each of us has the ability to make a difference. In the end, Lucas's story isn't just about him. It's about all of us. It's a call to action, to look at the world around us with new eyes, to see people for who they are and what they can become, not just for what they are at this very moment. It's about believing that even the smallest gesture of kindness can have the power to change the course of someone's life. Just as Ronaldo believed in Lucas when no one else did, we all have the ability to believe in someone else, and that can make all the difference. Sometimes, the greatest victories aren't won in the arenas where we expect them. They're won in the moments when we choose to uplift someone, to give them a chance, to believe in their potential. And when we do that, we create ripples that can change the world in ways we never imagined. Would you have stopped at that park bench? Would you have seen the potential in Lucas, even when he had nothing to show for it but a stack of sketches and a dream? Would you have been the one to believe when everyone else doubted? It's not easy. But it's moments like these that shape the future. So, ask yourself, who can you believe in today? Who's waiting for someone to see them, to help them rise, to show them that they're worth believing in? You have the power to be that person. You have the power to change lives.